Hi, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Gabriela Garza Canales, and I am the music director of the Poulsbo Community Orchestra. Today, we are presenting you one lecture with a very special guest, Dr. Jorge Pérez-Gómez, who I will introduce here in a little bit. The purpose of this lecture is to highlight three remarkable works of one of the greatest Mexican composers of the 20th century, Silvestre Revueltas. We will present the works, talk about their historical background, the social and political context in which these works were written, and we will be showing videos with performances of these pieces. Thank you for joining us today, and let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jorge Pérez-Gómez and tell you a little bit about him. Jorge Pérez-Gómez was born in Mexico City, Mexico, and he is now Professor Emeritus at the University of New Mexico, where he served for 30 years as the director of the University of New Mexico Symphony Orchestra and as professor of the conducting studies. I had the big fortune to study with him for about 4 years back in Albuquerque. Maestro Pérez-Gómez has appeared with orchestras all over Europe and America. After beginning his conducting career in his native Mexico City as artistic director and principal conductor of the Orquesta Mexicana de la Juventud, Maestro Pérez-Gómez received the Diploma of Merit in Conducting from Accademia Chigiana in Siena, Italy, and degrees from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, Northwestern University, and the Eastman School of Music in the United States. Maestro Pérez-Gómez has been recognized both in the United States and Mexico for his research and recording of the works of Mexican composer Silvestre Revueltas. His recording of Troca and other composers' orchestral works with the Moravian Philharmonic gained praise as an important document, which demonstrates why Revueltas is considered one of the greatest representatives of Mexican culture and one of Mexico's most accomplished artists of the 20th century. In October 2004, in collaboration with the puppeteer company Teatro Tinglado from Mexico City, Maestro Pérez-Gómez was invited to take the University of New Mexico Symphony Orchestra on tour to Mexico. The premiere performance in Mexico of Troca with puppets, as originally conceived by the composer, was the highlight of these performances. Most recently, Maestro Pérez-Gómez has been invited as guest lecturer of the music of Revueltas by diverse Italian conservatories in Rome, Florence, Salerno, and more. Maestro Pérez-Gómez has conducted the National Orchestra of Mexico, the Oradea Philharmonic, and the Brasso Philharmonic, the Festival Orchestra, the Orquesta Sinfónica de la Universidad de Guanajuato, the Orquestra Espacio Música, the San Jose Symphony Orchestra, and the New Mexico Symphony Orchestra, among others. He has served as faculty of the Tuscia Opera Festival in Viterbo and of Espacio Musica Opera Festival in Orvieto, Italy. Dr. Pérez-Gómez recently published his book, Handbook of Conducting Technique, and offers yearly conducting masterclasses in the country, having established an excellent reputation as conducting pedagogue. Without further ado, welcome, Jorge, and it is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Gabby, very much for the introduction.
Yeah, no. We would like to start by telling a little bit of who was Revueltas, and afterwards we will address the three specific works. Silvestre Revueltas was born on the last day of the 19th century in Santiago Papasquiaro in the state of Durango, Mexico. Revueltas was raised into a humble household, and since a very young age, he showed an appreciation for sound and music and he started studying violin at the age of 8. He first came to the United States to study 1 year at St. Edward's College in Austin, Texas, and afterwards, from 1918 to 1922, he continued his music studies at Chicago Musical College. For several years, Revueltas worked in the US and Mexico both as a violinist and as a conductor. And in 1929, he returned to Mexico by an invitation of Carlos Chavez to take the position of assistant conductor of the Orquesta Sinfónica de México. It was during these years and up until his death in 1940 when he wrote the vast majority of his works. It is important to mention that in 1936, he became the president of the League of Revolutionary Writers and Artists. And thanks to this post, Revueltas got to meet and work with some of Mexico's most important artists. Equally important is to know that in 1937, Revueltas traveled to Spain to support the Republican cause in the Spanish Civil War. As we will see later, Revueltas' works can only be understood in connection to his social political environment. Revueltas died in 1940 due to an aggravated pneumonia, leaving behind a significant output of repertoire with works written for orchestra, chamber groups, duets, songs, and music for film. Now, let's have Dr. Pérez-Gómez introduce the first work, Troca. Welcome, Jorge.
Thank you, Gabi, very much. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's start with Troca as the first work of these three that we are referring to today. Troca, the word troca, the root of the word troca means change. And in a segment, you will see how that has something to do with what I'm going to say. Germán List Arzubide was a Mexican pedagogue and a member of the group of artists known as the Estridentistas, which in English we will call them the strident ones. That means the extreme ones. And he wrote a book entitled Troca el Poderoso, Troca the All-Powerful, in the early 1930s, which is a series of children's stories which had the purpose of teaching children of how technology would become an essential tool in the search of the good for all, a communist ideal. This is a solution to many of society's inequalities and problems. Troca, a robot, transforms into a different machine in each chapter of the book. This is where the root change from troca is applied, and interacts with the two children protagonists of the book and explains to them how technology will benefit all. The illustration that we see on the screen is the original illustration of Troca, the robot, as part of the original edition of the book. And as we can tell, the illustration portrays Troca composed of all mechanical elements. The author would refer to him as the embodiment of all mechanical things. Revueltas wrote the music for a dance pantomime, as he knew Liszt Arzubide, and their intention was to present Troca with puppets, and that way it will become a direct way to teach children about technology through a theatrical presentation of the original concept. The puppets were never finished during Revueltas' life. And in 2003, in collaboration with Pablo Cueto, the grandson of the original puppet master, I conducted the world premiere of Troca as a dance pantomime with puppets as originally intended in the Keller Hall of the University of New Mexico. As a result of all this research, a computer animation of the original image of Troca with a soundtrack of Troca recorded by myself in 1997 with the Moravian Philharmonic Orchestra in the Czech Republic was another important outcome of the transformation of the robot. The following animation will show the original illustration in motion, surrounded by images of the Mexican landscape, and we will see the replacement of the original mechanical elements of the illustration with an update regarding satellite communications, the image of Troca reflected on a computer screen, and his heart being replaced from a sprocket with a computer chip.
Thank you, Jorge. Well, let's not watch this video. So I'm just gonna give me 1 minute and we're gonna show this presentation. All right. Thank you. Well, that was fantastic performance. And thank you, Jorge, for uh, letting us present that to our audience.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this this well this robot becoming alive through first with his mechanical parts and then with his updated parts according to our time with computer chips and satellite communication devices, etc. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Fantastic. All right. Well, I would like to move on now to our second piece. So if you just give me 1 second, we're gonna go back to the presentation. So the second piece that we're gonna be talking today is Redes. In 1933, the Mexican government sponsored a project to financially support the production of a series of socially oriented films which aim to portray national identity. Redes is the name of the first and last of these films to be produced. Initially conceived as pescados, which translates to fishes, Redes depicts the reality of poverty and inequality that the fishermen of a small village live with. The music of Revueltas is literally a protagonist, which enriches the simple plot in which the inhabitants of Alvarado, Veracruz, rebel against an oppressive and inhumane power figure. Initially, Carlos Chavez, who at the time was the head of the Mexican Fine Arts Department, was in charge of composing the film score for Redes. Soon after, the term of the by that time president Abelardo Rodriguez came to an end. With the new administration, Carlos Chavez had to step down from his position, and his successor, Antonio Castro Leal, assigned the task to write the music for the film to Silvestre Revueltas. This is to be known as one of the main reasons that created friction between these two very important figures of Mexican 20th century music. The film Redes premiered on July 9 of 1936 at Mexico's Cine Principal. Oftentimes, the music from Redes is performed on stage thanks to a few suites that have been arranged from the full score. For example, the legendary Austrian conductor Erich Kleiber freely arranged a suite for orchestra based on the full score. Additionally, it is well documented that Silvestre Revueltas himself conducted a few times a concert suite of Redes. His concert version was never found as a separate score, different from the full film score. But in an effort to recreate Revueltas' own suite, several musicologists recently published a concert version gathered from different evidence and materials that seem to accurately depict the material that Revueltas used for his suite. One more concert version exists, arranged by Mexican conductor Enrique Arturo Diemeke. In 2014, the University of New Mexico Symphony Orchestra played live the entire film score of Redes while the movie showed on the screen of Keller Hall at the University of New Mexico Center for the Arts. In this performance, I played the percussion. I played in the percussion section, and our guest today, Maestro Pérez-Gómez, conducted. And the following excerpt that you're going to watch is the final scene of the movie in which the fishermen advance in their boats towards the town with the purpose of lynching the man responsible for their oppression. So I really hope you enjoyed this short excerpt. It was fantastic to play with Maestro Pérez-Gómez, a great experience. So let me share this and we'll be back. Fantastic excerpt. Really short. Really, I would love to show this entire performance. I remember in detail every rehearsal. It was quite a challenge, wasn't it?
Yes, it was quite a challenge, because just for our audience to know that we have to extract the dialogue from the movie, so that way, I'm sorry, we extract this music from the movie, because it had terrible sound at that point when the movie was first created. So then by playing the music live, we had to take the music out and just leave the dialogue, and that was a challenge. And then also the timing of doing a live performance of the music to go along with the action in the movie. So that was, yes.
Is this something that, so like, you had to practice a lot, right? So like with how many times did you watch the film?
That's right.
Many times.
Very, very specific cues with the timing, and because some things had to happen at certain specific seconds and certain specific moments, because if not, it will not match the action. And I remember there is a scene with some bullet being shot, and we had to arrive there a split second before the bullet was shot. So it was quite.
I remember that. I remember, yes.
Right, but I think our orchestra enjoyed it, and it was a great thing. Yeah, and for us, the publisher created this special edition of the complete score for presenting the film with the music live. So anyway, from every point of view, it was a great experience. So.
Yeah, and you didn't have a click, right? Like there was no click track.
No, there was no click track.
It was all just by memorization of the scenes and the tempo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, and also, by being 1936 when this was written, film had it had just started developing, so sound was terrible. So the film was restored, and so the music really becomes, like we said, a protagonist, because it really is crucial to the action. It's not like just some music score where it's just an accompaniment. But here the music really participates in the whole drama of this film.
Yeah, really fascinating. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna go to the third piece now. Just give me 1 second. All right, so moving on to the third and last piece of today's lecture, which Maestro Pérez-Gómez will talk about, is Sensemaya, Jorge.
Yes. So Sensemaya is perhaps the best known work by the composer. It is one of the few works which has two different versions, the first for a small orchestra composed in 1937, and the second for a large orchestra composed the following year, 1938. Sensemaya represents the ideal of the composer in establishing a national identity which can only be understood in terms of the social-political climate of the 1930s. Sensemaya, entitled A Chant for Killing a Snake, was originally a poem written by Revueltas' friend, the Cuban poet Nicolás Guillén. The poem represents the ritual of killing a snake, which originally belongs to the African Lukumi culture. Revueltas, in his musical composition, establishes a close relationship between the metric of the poem and that of the music. We should add here that, for example, the seventh syllable or the seventh beat of each measure in the music has an accent, and that becomes an important element of this asymmetrical pattern of 7. The orchestration in both the chamber and large orchestra versions feature the percussion and wind sections of the orchestra in unusual combinations, always emphasizing the powerful rhythmic drive. Many listeners sometimes refer to this as the Mexican Rite of Spring because of its tremendous rhythmic power. The strings also are written mainly as an addition to the percussive effects, showing a departure from the romantic style of the late 19th century European composers. as Cuba at that point in the 1930s was governed under the dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista, killing the snake becomes a political statement. In the following video, the University of New Mexico Chamber Orchestra performs Sensemaya in its small orchestra version as part of the puppet shows that were presented at Keller Hall in 2003.
Thank you, Jorge. All right, let's watch this video. So if again, give me 1 minute. Well, thank you. Thank you one more time for letting us show this fantastic video. Yeah, it's really, really, really fascinating, the work with the puppets and the company.
It's a pleasure to have shared all of this work of our favorite Silvestre Revueltas with you.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, and so we have arrived to the end of our presentation here. To our audience, thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this presentation and a little bit of an insight to Revuelta's life and his works, as well as the work that Maestro Pérez-Gómez has done and the research that he has done in the topic, and this work around the world that he has done. And please mark your calendars. So for joining us to our next virtual concert is going to be on Saturday, April 24th, 4 p.m. And members from the Poulsbo Community Orchestra will be playing some chamber music for you. So if you haven't done it yet, please mark your calendars. And so for today, thank you so much, Jorge. It was really a pleasure to have you here. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.